All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here at Big Table Farm. It's Tuesday, May 28th, 2019. We're here with Clare Carver and Brian Marcy. Thanks for joining us today, guys. We'll start you off by asking you a nice, easy question, which is why wine?
How's that easy?
Why wine? Why are we making wine?
Why wine? How did you get to here? Why are you at this point?
We like to drink it. Yeah. I actually started off making beer, and I did that for a while, and that's what I studied, and then did professionally. And along the way, I got introduced to wine pretty early on, and then living in Calistoga, and the last brewery that I was working in closed. And I didn't want to move, and I'd already started drinking wine, had friends in the wine business, and it was a pretty easy transition. So that was in 1999, and I just never looked back. So yeah, we've been doing this since here in Oregon since 2006. So I spent the time after that learning how to make wine in California, and then we decided we wanted to do it for ourselves, and we wanted a little more space, and we pretty tight budget, and I was just working in cellars, and Claire didn't have much money either, so more space in California wasn't going to happen. So we started looking, and this fit all of our criteria in terms of what we were looking for. So yeah, I've always loved to cook and to eat and to drink, and wine is I just think a really easy and natural pairing to food, and we've just continued that as part of our lifestyle, part of our lives, I guess. Maybe even too much so, in lots of different ways. So yeah, I like wine. I like to drink it. I like to make it, and I'm glad that someone knows how to sell it, because I'm not a very good salesperson. I would just give it all away. Actually,
you would.
Yeah. Yeah. We would. Yeah. We wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for Claire.
And in the early days, when I met Brian in '99, and he'd done a few vintages during his process in beer, but he was just really getting into wine at that point, and it was very romantic to me. I was like, oh, you're in wine? That's cool. Wine country is beautiful, but I knew nothing about wine at all, and I was working as a fine artist and a graphic designer. Wine packaging was interesting to me at that point as a designer. And when we were first dating, I was commuting back and forth up to the Napa Valley. We were living in San Francisco, and so I definitely spent a lot of time up there. And then before we moved in together, we went to Australia, and he worked a vintage there. And I think that's where I really kind of got hooked on the business with him, where it was like, oh, this is a whole sort of different approach to your life. And although I thought I was a good cook, I realized I wasn't.
You did a pretty good job in Australia.
But I really enjoyed it.
That's when you worked at it. Yeah.
That's when I worked at it, and I started to realize that there was so much to learn, and I think that was sort of when I got a little bit bitten by the bug. From a creative person's standpoint, just that there were so many layers, and it was so just beautifully rich in all these different ways, both from a food and as well as a production standpoint. And when we were dating early on, I did tons of paintings of vineyards, so the aesthetics of it appealed to me. And it was very convenient that my boyfriend was a winemaker or was learning to be a winemaker. So, and then early in our dating, we bought our first house in 2000, and he was working for other people. And during those early years, I was doing graphic design and marketing and wine label design for wineries. And I started interacting with all these different people that were starting their own brands. And between Australia and those early years in Napa, it was like, well, maybe we could do this, I think those early seeds were planted, and because again I was helping people from the marketing side, I was like, well, of course you can't help, well, maybe some people can, but if you're naturally entrepreneurial, which both of us are, you can't help, we couldn't help but think, oh, how would we do this if we were going to do our own project? And so even in those early days, we definitely were paying attention to what other people were doing and soaking it all in, I would say. And that time in Napa really informed a lot of decisions we made when we came to Oregon. I mean, we certainly had to learn a lot and have learned a lot on the job, on our own dollar, but we definitely brought those 10 years in Napa with us, or his 10 years, my 8, when we came to Oregon, and we had some pretty clear ideas, whether they were right or wrong, time will only tell, of how we wanted to approach our business. And as Brian said, we chose Oregon for a couple reasons. A big one was the feasibility financially of us to be able to start something here, because we didn't have deep savings. This was, as Brian says,
It's a first career, not a second.
Yeah, it's a first career, not a second. So yeah, we didn't make a bunch of money somewhere else and then start a wine brand as a second project. So when it is a first project, you don't have a lot of financial resources, but you don't have a lot of business acumen either. And so even that we've had to learn on our own, and we've definitely had a lot of people help us and give us amazing advice, but we've still had to learn it, and some of those lessons have been hard won for sure. Whether it's how to build our own website or do online sales, or credit card transactions, or QuickBooks, or accounting issues, or employee, or so many different things. But yeah, so
There you go.
Google Calendars, still don't know how to use those.
So I'll come back to challenges in a moment, but I'm curious, Brian, specifically, when you made that transition from beer to wine, or started to get interested in wine, what were the kind of important learning points you had? What was it you needed to know to be a winemaker, and how did you kind of learn those skills?
On the job. I'd already just finished school, and I was uninterested in going back to school. I was still paying for the first time around. I was like, I don't need to go back. And I'd met people who didn't have formal training, and that was all I needed to know. Not all I needed to know, but that was the inspiration. Like, okay, I can learn this just by doing it. So making beer is factory work. Breweries they're hot and they're loud and they're stinky, and you do the same thing over and over and over all year long. And the goal is to make a consistent product from a changing agricultural input. Whereas the winery, making wine is still an agricultural product, but the goal, at least in the places that I worked, and my goal now, is to make the best product that I can from a changing agricultural input. So in my mind, it's a little bit more like cooking, and it's a little more creative in that you can take this product that has seasonal variation or vintage variation and make the best you can, and it doesn't have to be the same year in and year out. And that to me is a more creative endeavor than trying to make the same thing over and over and over. And then the seasonality of winery. Can someone let the dog in?
Sorry. Put a pin in it. You
Go
can
ahead.
just open it.
The seasonality aspect of working in the winery is also really attractive in that we're really busy during harvest, and then things slow down in the wintertime, and then springtime it's busy, summertime is busy, and then of course you start all over again with harvest and winemaking, and that appeals to me as well. And that there's the rhythm of agricultural, I guess, and the growing aspect of it in a way that you don't get with making beer, where the grain comes in a truck and goes into a bulk bin, and hops live in a cold room and a freezer, and you can use them all year round. And certainly there are creative aspects to that, but the wine suits me better. And then again, I always love to cook, and that's really, even as a little guy, and I think that's where the using your senses in making wine is important to me, and the cooking and then wine, food and wine go together really well, without even trying in some ways. Whereas I think the applications for beer in a meal are a little more limited. I mean, certainly there are possibilities, but not quite as versatile in terms of a beverage to be consumed with food. Certainly, there are people that are going to tell me or would say otherwise, but I've tried both, and the wine is definitely, from my perspective, a much better companion to a meal. So,
I think there's like different expressions of creativity in different people, and some people, if you think about songwriting or painting, for example, where you're interacting with something that maybe is more ephemeral, and then there's this creative process that I've seen you reproduce over and over, which is where you're interacting with a raw material. And I've seen that when you've done sculpture, like in our, we've taken scraps of metal, whatever, and you've seen something and you've had like a spark or an inspiration from that thing, and then you've made it into something else. And you do that when you cook, and you do that every year during harvest. Because a very important thing that you do during harvest is Brian does all the sampling himself, and he goes and he tastes those grapes, and that spark that happens, I've seen it year in, year out with you.
Absolutely.
And you, that moment when you decide that this grape is presenting in a particular way carries you all the way through harvest and informs your decisions as a creative maker all the way through harvest. And there's it's interesting to watch you, and I think whether you're cooking or making a piece of sculpture for our yard or wherever, or making wine, I've seen that spark happen to you and watched it sort of go throughout.
And the same is true for you.
Yeah.
When you're painting.
Yeah, when I see something.
That makes sense.
But it's interesting though, because I think mine is less like from a single object, where I think, I don't know, it's like a different, maybe it's the same. But,
That's awesome. I like that. I'm curious about, you kind of described your winemaking philosophy as making the best of what you have in that given vintage, and making it like the best it can be. Did you have that coming in, or is that something you've kind of developed as you've become more of an experienced winemaker?
No, I think that was something that I've sought, I guess, in terms of where I went to learn how to make wine. I wanted to work with people who were making a highly regarded wine, and I think that's just my personality, is to always,
seek out the best.
Whether
You've
it's
always worked with.
Whether it's I'm competitive, I guess. It would be the with myself, and then not so much with others, but I definitely have competed, athletically when I was younger in lots of different ways, and that's always. And I think that's a similar sort of a drive, I guess, in terms of sort of how you do things. And I mean, I live with what I make, and so literally, I mean, this is our tasting room right here, and our kitchen's right there. So, it's not that I don't have to travel that far to try the wine that I've made. And so, and I make that commute pretty regularly. I walk from the kitchen to the tasting room and to see
That
how,
whole commute
Yeah.
into the garden.
into the garden to see how to see how things are doing. So I drink my own wine regularly, and so it better be good, because otherwise I wouldn't want to drink it. So, and then I think that's something that's pretty unique in that, because Claire and I started this small and just grew as we could, we chose not to bring in any investors or partners. So it's all comes from our hand, so to speak. We don't have anyone else putting their 2 cents in, and so.
Or dictating style.
Dictating style, yeah. We get to decide what it's going to be, and what's the expression, too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the sauce. Well, I mean, this is it right here. This is where it starts, and so we get to make those decisions, and we get to make what we want to drink. And fortunately, other people seem to share a similar aesthetic when it comes to the wine that we make. So yeah. That was a long answer, I think.
That's.
But I'm not sure what the question was.
That's the whole goal here is for long answers.
Okay. Yeah.
You guys mentioned coming up here for a specific reason in terms of being able to afford space, and you mentioned kind of developing your own ideas while you were in Napa about what you would do with your space. So what drew you to this particular piece of land as you were kind of plotting out what you wanted to do?
Well, we had 3 criteria that were important to us in terms of where we landed, and 1, we need to be able to afford the property, and 2, there needed to be an established wine industry so that we could both keep working, and then 3, we wanted to be close to a metropolitan area.
You forgot the 4th one.
What's the 4th one?
I had to be able to have room for a horse.
Claire needs to have. Well, that was kind of.
My priority, not yours.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And 1 and 4 were kind of the same. If we were gonna find someplace in P&A.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, those and this area just fit really well for all those things in this property. This place was way more than we were looking for in terms of size and price and scope and all those things. So it was a real stretch to make it work. And the house was pink on the inside and the outside when we bought it, and definitely needed some work. And we had just finished fixing the house that we had sold in California in Napa. And I spent about 5 years, from top to bottom.
From the roof to climbing around in
underneath and
spider webs.
Yeah, and I was done. I didn't want to do it again. I was like, fuck, here's another house project. Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
We've done things slowly, and
yeah,
there's still more to do.
Oh, there's still more to do. But yeah, it just fit. It just felt right. It was, it was a lot. But it had, this lower part here that we could use for pasture. We knew we wanted to have animals. And then there's the hillside that was appropriate for vineyard, which was also something that we knew we wanted to do. And then there's about 20 or 25 acres of mature trees that are just nice to have to be able to, wander through when there's a moment and you need a break from
when you need to wander.
Yeah, we need to wander around. We don't do that much anymore.
And I think we did know that we wanted some animals and we wanted to grow some food. Because when we lived in Napa, we bought like 7 little chickens.
We had chickens in our backyard.
Chickens, like so many people do. We had a little victory garden. We dug up the lawn on one side. I mean, we were 3,000 square foot, wasn't it?
It was larger than that.
7,000 square foot?
I
don't know. It wasn't that big.
It was just a downtown house.
It was just a little city lot. But so we had garden and chickens, and I guess that's all we had.
But that was, backyard chickens were, our neighbors thought we were weird. Because this was 15 years ago.
This was more than 15 years ago.
2000. We sold that in 2000.
It was 19 years ago.
2006 we sold it.
We're getting old.
2006? Yeah, 2006.
Yeah, but we got chickens right away in 2000.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
2019 now. Anyway, yeah. So I think that aspect. And when we lived in Australia,
Yeah, that's right. We were kind of window shop at the, the real estate offices
and
and
be
just,
like, oh, we could have some animals, and
yeah, dream a little bit.
yeah,
But that wasn't the right place. That was too far away from family and whatever.
yeah. And then when we were making the transition, we both read the Omnivore's Dilemma,
Right.
and that was like, oh,
Well, that just informed how we
yeah,
did things. We had already decided to.
We'd already decided, but informed and inspired a little bit,
Yeah.
I would say,
Yeah.
because we came up here and got Godio and her mom
Right.
and Edward right away. Well, I had my horse
And then the chickens.
and the chickens right away.
And we, if we hadn't read that book, we would have just built a chicken coop. And instead we built the chicken bus.
Which we still have.
It's still out there. That's what we move around.
Yeah, out of old scraps that were
They were
here.
here, yeah. And then just read more from that book. And that's,
It was a jumping off point.
yeah,
yeah.
like where, and how do you, keep animals and move them around. And so that's, we've learned how to do, managed pasture or managed grazing, both from reading and from just practice. And so that's something that's been really important to us as well, that we knew that we wanted to do in addition to all the other things that we've done. In fact, that might have been more important, at least initially anyway, is
What might have been more important?
the animals.
More important than what?
Than winery and vineyard and all those things. I mean, as I said some point, that if you told me that 12 years ago that our lives would look like this, I wouldn't have believed you. That all of this was happening, and we set out to do a few things, and it just sort of has continued to grow, snowball. Here we are, juggling. Yeah.
What did you envision with you envisioned, talk about animals on a farm and wine. How did you envision it working together, and has it worked in the way you thought it might? You said you can't picture being here, but it seems to have worked, so.
Well, yeah, it's definitely worked, but it's been by the seat of our pants, really. It'd be the short answer. I mean, my vision was, so we bought that house in Napa in 2001 or something like that. And then we sold it.
2001?
We sold it in 2006. And,
No, 2000. I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, we had it 4 or 5 years. And we sold in 2006, and I saw the writing on the wall. It had basically doubled in price. And I realized that we were sleeping in our ability to do something different. And I'd wanted to sell that and then just buy something outright, and so that we wouldn't have to worry about paying a mortgage or paying rent. And of course, then we found this place, and
Your wife loved it.
yeah, and it was just like, fuck, this is not what I had envisioned. This is way more, and I'm gonna have to get a job and work and figure out how to pay the same mortgage again. And even though we put a substantial down payment, and we still had the same mortgage basically. So that wasn't what I had envisioned, and so it just sort of went.
Sorry, baby.
That's okay. It's been fine. It's been good, but it just so just as for example, I mean, that wasn't what we intended. And then we started making wine because I bought grapes, and then we had to figure out how to sell it, and we didn't really have any way of selling it. And we knew that the Wine Country Weekend was part of the deal. The Memorial Day that we just did, and Thanksgiving, and how do we get people to come out here and we were like, well, we will use our house, and because that's all we had. It was still pink on the outside at that point, and we changed the pink on the inside before we moved in. That was Claire, was her brilliant. She knew that if we didn't paint it before we moved in, it would never happen.
It would never get painted.
And, yeah, exactly.
Once you put all your furniture in there and everything, it was like,
Yeah, so we got it painted on the inside. But we, I don't remember how we went to get our SEW, and we went to the county, and they're like, you can't. You got to do all these other things before you can. So I think the first time we tried to do the open house here, we couldn't do it.
We couldn't do it. We had to put a bunch of things in place.
So we had to get a conditional use permit, and then once
more parking.
we had to make more parking, and so so where just in front of that metal shed, you could barely get one car in there, and so I think it was 2010.
I can't remember.
Yeah, and harvest had just ended. And we were out there, we bought
It was raining.
It was raining, and we bought, I think, $2,000 or $3,000 worth of gravel. And we were out there with our little tractor, spreading it around, and shovels, and wheelbarrows, and
exhausted.
And we were just, and just so we could,
just so we can host
people
and
to.
We made just enough money to pay for the gravel, and that was it.
But that was what we did to sort of get started, and
figuring out how to sell.
And we were psyched, like we paid for the gravel.
One step.
Yeah, we bought a lot more gravel since.
We bought a lot more gravel since.
But anyway.
Yeah, those first years, I mean, we just everything that we made from selling wine, we just put back into gravel or buying more bottles or buying grapes or whatever.
Yeah.
The first 10 years of doing this, we didn't take a paycheck. So we didn't actually start taking any money out of the business in the form of a paycheck for 10 years. So it's definitely been a process, for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny to hear you say that, Brian. Like,
say what?
We had no vision. Because, I don't know, I feel like there was a little more of a vision than just like, just like let it. And, when we moved here, I felt like we knew we wanted to plant vineyard.
Yeah. Yes, no, that's true.
And I thought we knew we wanted to have a winery. But maybe you didn't feel that way.
My memory's not as good as yours.
But
about certain things.
I know we knew we wanted to plant vineyard because when we looked at this property, we got it soil tested.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
We made the decision to buy this property because
it was appropriate.
It was appropriate for vineyard, and we walked the site with Kevin Chambers, and
that's true.
He helped us to do soil testing. So even if we've both forgotten, we wouldn't have done that unless we had some inkling or hope or dream that we would plant vineyard here.
Yes, you're right.
So, just saying.
Yeah, okay, you're right.
We weren't totally hapless.
No, of course not. But like I say, if you told me that this is what my life would look like 12 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you that we'd put all these things into place to, that you guys are sitting here interviewing us.
It's a lot busier than we expected.
Yeah, tell me about that. Tell me about how people found you and how you grew the business.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Would be sort of the...
Yeah, when we got our very first wine score, what year was that? That was from the 2006 vintage.
Right.
So it would have been like 2007
or 2008.
Yeah, 2008. We were making our wine in a custom crush facility, and I got the score. I don't know how I found out about it. It must have been on we didn't really have phones then. There was no iPhone. I don't know.
Anyway.
Oh, I must have seen it written down.
Somewhere, yeah.
And I was so excited I ran around the block. Because I didn't want to gloat or be weird in front of the other people who were at the facility with us. So I just ran around the block. But it was huge. And it's not that and that score, honestly, compared to the scores we get now, would have been one that I wouldn't even pay attention to now. But so that really helps, having so many reviewers taste and give us accolades. That's been huge. There's been a lot of press of just telling our story. That's been really helpful. Everything from, I remember back in the day when Kathleen Bauer wrote us up all the way to the New York Times, and everybody in between, whether it's Food and Wine or that huge spread in Sunset, all of those things really help. Yeah,
and then we also would go to Pinot Days in California, which is just basically a tasting of Pinot Noir. And we did that with our very first vintage, with the 2008 vintage.
Yeah.
We made 175 cases of Pinot. And we would go to this thing, and Oregon, where's that? But we would meet just one or two people that were interested and genuine, and
we met Patrick Kaminsky at one of those things,
and Rusty Gaffney. So those events were really important. They had it in Southern California, in San Francisco 2 or 3 different times, and we would go to those and just stand behind the table and pour our wine. We still do it.
Because back then, Willamette Wineries Association didn't have the Pinot in the city. If they'd had that, we would have done that instead, but they
Yeah.
didn't have that event yet.
Or we
And
were unaware of it, or I don't know
I don't
what.
think they had it. And
Yeah.
we were too small for IPNC back then.
And Pinot Camp as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Although we did do a IPNC event here.
Oh, that's right.
We did a lunch here.
We
and,
hosted a lunch. We weren't allowed to be in it yet because we didn't make enough wine.
Right.
But they invited us to host a lunch,
Yeah.
which was
So-
wacky because we didn't have a winery. It was just like this grubby little farm. Everyone was up in the barn and they were way too hot on the grass. Oh, it wasn't good.
It was a warm day.
It was always a warm day during IPNC.
Yeah. Anyway,
What was the question?
how did we get the word out? Or
Yeah. How did you grow to here?
So press, good wine. Your wine's
Yeah.
really good.
Well, and then we would, we had our house, and we'd take appointments. People would call, and if they wanted to come out, we would say, "Sure, come on out." And I'd bake bread for every appointment.
It's always been by appointment. We've never done it a different way.
Yeah. If I opened 3 bottles and I sold 3 bottles,
We considered that a win.
that was a win.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I mean, that's the same money that we would have gotten if we sold those 6 bottles to a distributor. And we'd made a friend, and
Who hopefully would buy them again.
who would have had a great time and then come back, or buy more in the future or whatever. So yeah, we really had to figure out how to sell wine. We didn't know. That was a new. I'd never done that before, and I'm not a natural salesperson, unlike some people. Clementine.
Yeah, but even that I've had to learn. Like,
Yeah.
I remember
Hey.
seeing our, hey, be quiet. We're interviewing. This is our turn, not your turn.
She's really old. She's and bossy.
She's over 13 and she's deaf. So, hi. Okay, we hear you. I remember I was like, okay, I have to. This is before we had distributors. So we were self-distributing in Portland. And I asked our friends Ken and Erica, because Erica worked in a restaurant then, and Ken was working for Galaxy. And I was like, how do you even see accounts? Like, what's the protocol? And Ken's like, okay, you make an appointment, you take the samples. Sometimes they do cattle call tastings. Like, this is how it works. Is this going to be awful? Okay.
We've had plenty of dogs on interviews before. It's just part of the course.
Okay. And I remember my very first appointment, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I went to a wine shop and they weren't super welcoming and kind of beat me up a little bit. And I finally just said, let me just pour the wine for you. And they clearly weren't going to buy it by how the whole thing had started. So I just poured the wine and almost ran out of the shop and went into my car and just cried. Because it was just so hard. I tell people that story now. They're like, "You? No," because obviously I figured out how to sell wine and I'm fine at it now. And just the fact that somebody made me cry is amazing. But it was scary in the beginning. We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah,
and every single sale was like a make or break deal for us, and there was a lot riding on it. So. Yeah, those early days were.
We would talk about it being in a pitch black room, and you can't find the light switch.
That's what it felt like.
We were constantly sort of feeling around, trying to find the light switches to figure out how to figure out what to do and where to go. And yeah, it was definitely a disorienting sort of an experience. But we slowly just kept working at it, and if you keep touching the wall, you're going to find that switch eventually. So yeah. And so we've definitely turned on a few lights.
Was there a moment where you felt like you had kind of figured it out? Was there something that like where the light felt like it was on and was going to stay on?
2016, 10 years in.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I think we had enough of a track record in terms of sales that we could start making decisions about based on previous years, and I think that was important, just as a business.
And we weren't like, it was less and less like, oh my God, is it going to work?
Yeah, that's true too.
I mean, Because there was 2006 all the way up until 13 when we did a crowdfunding campaign in 13. We had a little bit of business savings, and then we did a crowdfunding campaign, and then we did a loan against our house. And between those three things, we built the winery here. So that we were on a really, really skinny budget to build the winery, and that was 14, and that was before we'd even taken a paycheck. So, and that was the first year we got a really big tax bill. So there was a bunch of things that happened in 14 that were just like, I don't know, that that was again really scary. So it wasn't until we saw clear of that for at least a full year, until 16, I feel like, until it was like, okay, this is probably going to work. Because we were definitely over our skis a little bit in 14 with the construction and just everything. So yeah, 16 is probably when it started to feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And now this year, between 16 and 18, we started, I keep talking about started taking a paycheck, making it sound like we started buying cars and vacations, but we didn't, of course. We just saved that money. Clementine, just lie down. And that's how we've started the project that we're now embarking on, which is planting vineyard. So we started that last year in 18, spring of 18. And then winter into spring of 19, we did the fencing. And then now we're doing the carbonization, which is I don't know if you heard anything about this project, but this is pretty exciting. It's the first of its kind in the country. And it's our answer to the problem of the slash piles created when you clear ag land. And so it's still in process, and we won't know for 10 more years if crazy or brilliant. But right now it's feeling
somewhere in between.
Somewhere in the middle.
Definitely crazy.
Definitely crazy. But so that's been a process, and I feel like we've made the right choice to do this. It's been expensive, and definitely had some pitfalls and trials, because like anything that's never been done before. But the guys we're working with have been great. So we'll see.
And this is the process to change the smoke, right? To capture the smoke. Tell us a bit more about like what the plan is, what the point is.
So the hill that will be vineyard was planted about 15 years ago with reproduction timber, with the intention of that growing another 20 years to become timber. And since we decided to harvest it prematurely, we didn't want to just put a match to it and burn it. So we wanted to make a product as it was intended. So any sort of wood products, conventional wood products, were really not an option because the trees were too small. And so I'd read about biochar and even made some myself on a very small scale. And it was like, let's see if we can track this down and make it happen. And so that's what we did. And so we found someone who just bought this machine called the carbonator, and they were willing to. They're from Indiana. They were called Blackwood Solutions, and they were willing to come out here and take the harvested reproduction timber and put it in their machine and turn it into biochar. And basically the way it works is it's has what's called an air curtain. So air blows across the top. It's kind of like if you've ever walked into a cold room or where the blast of air comes down. It's essentially the same thing, but it just goes vertically across the top. So it blows all of the smoke and unburned gases back into the flame, and so they're completely combusted. And then the char falls to the bottom of the machine, goes through a grate where it gets quenched in water and then augured out the back, and you have basically activated charcoal that can then be used as a It has lots of uses. I think primarily what we produce here will be used for a soil amendment. As a soil amendment, it is charged and then has lots of pores, and so it'll hold on to, physically, because of the charge, hold on to minerals and nutrients, and then the pores will give microbiology a place to live, in addition to acting as a reservoir for water. And a lot of this is, there are people who know a lot more about it than I do, and its effects on growing crops and food and things. So we won't put it in the vineyard because at this point we don't know enough about how it'll affect that, and that's definitely needs to be a viable product so that we can continue to make wine that we can sell. We will experiment with the biochar in our pastures. And if the cows don't like the grass, then we'll just buy hay, I guess.
I think both of us, from the reading we've done, we'll see when
we're pretty optimistic. Yeah,
is that one of the reasons not to put it in the vineyard is it will potentially create too much vigor. Like it'll make things too fertile, which too much fertile isn't what you want necessarily in the vineyard. So it's not that we're worried it's going to poison it or something.
Right.
It's just create too much fertility.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting. That's really cool.
And then it is also a sequestration. So
instead of sending the carbon up into the air, you're keeping it in the form of biochar and then sinking it back into the earth. So we're not polluting the air, and we're
making a product,
sequestering carbon, and we're making a product, which is something that we've paid a lot of attention to in our farming practices.
Right.
I mean, even our pigs, they get fed out of our kitchen, they get all the fruit trees, they're finished on nuts, they start their lives and are fed here on the farm and finish here on the farm. And our cows rotate around our pastures, they're fed hay in the winter that comes from a quarter mile down the road. I mean, things here, we compost absolutely everything that comes out of the house. Well, not everything, we have a little bit of garbage, but all of the food waste. And then we compost everything that comes out of the winery in with everything that comes out of the barn. So.
And I think in terms of the animals, what we've moved towards is animals that can eat grass, that can graze, because that's what grows around here. I mean, in the beginning, we did pigs and lots of chickens, and those animals all need supplemental feed, grain, and we still do a couple pigs for ourselves, but they're a smaller breed that do really well
on forage
and just a little bit of grain. We don't do as many chickens as we used to, or eggs. We still do some, and we still buy some grain, but we've really sort of changed our focus to, grass grows here. We're not grain farmers, so let's
feed animals that do well on what we have in abundance.
On what we have here. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Hence all those cows you saw.
Yeah.
One thing, I'm going to get up for a second, I'll come right back. Sure. This is an archive. This is kind of cool. So this is this property in 1890. This photograph was taken in 1900. This is the house we're sitting in, and this is the Joseph Williams home. And like I said, it was built in 1890. This barn burned in the 40s, but the barn that's out there we rebuilt and we designed from this photograph here. And we use this for pitch and scale and size and placement on the property. But then Brian and I also went around to other barns in Yamhill County and even down the road and looked at their construction style, and then designed this barn to be not a replica, but
well, I would say contextual to the house.
Yeah.
I feel like we didn't really use that picture that much. In terms of placement and what we built, I felt like we used things that were still existing. Like all those pictures where I would stand in front of the barn, and then we
used those.
Yeah.
But, anyway. I did the drawings, not you. So anyway.
Okay, maybe you did that more than I did.
I think I used this more than you think I did. But anyway, I mean, it's tiny picture,
Sure.
so obviously we used other things as well. I
Yeah.
mean, we spent hours and hours and hours driving around, and Brian, because we know he's just about exactly 6 feet, so he would stand in front of a barn, and then I would like take little pictures and then do pencil drawings, and we would look at them. Then I made a bunch of scale models out of foam core, and but we tried to. And then the winery is up here, and then we made the winery look. And actually, I have a picture of this on my blog from way back. I could get it to you guys. And then I have a picture taken from the same vantage point of what we built, so you can see kind of 120 years difference.
Cool. Sure.
These hop kilns aren't there anymore, but anyway, I just thought this was because it's a historic homestead where we're sitting, and the people who there's another photograph on the wall there, and that was a long-term loan from the grandnephew of Joseph Williams, who built the house. And he gave that to us as long as we live here.
Oh, that's awesome.
If we move away, we have to give it back to him or
Leave it here.
with the house, but he has to know about it. So those were like the contingencies of that photograph, which makes sense because those are his family members, and he kind of wanted that prominently displayed.
Sure.
So
That's really awesome.
yeah.
That's really awesome.
Since we're talking about history and archives, we have this great book that we got from the grandson of the guy who built this house, who used to live here in the canyon, whose name is Joseph Williams. This is Williams Canyon Road that we're on. And when we moved here, I had a lost dog, and I knocked on his door, and that's how I met him.
Oh.
And he wanted me to show me his rock collection in his
that's right.
basement. So, and then we just got chatting, and he's so cute. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, he's then he realized that we cared about the house and the history, so he gave us this great collection. It's a history book that they wrote. It's a self-published family book, and it had all these great photographs in it and all the history of the property. So anyway,
That's awesome.
that was kind of cool.
As we're talking about design, we'll kind of change gears a little bit and talk about your wine labels, obviously.
Oh, I have another. What do we call this? Audio visual? No. What do you call this when you have a
Prop. You have a nice
prop?
Yeah, some people call it
Another
prop.
Show and tell.
Show and tell. Sure.
So obviously your wine labels are really unique and interesting. And so tell us about your kind of process in designing them and the response you've gotten to them.
So when we did our very first wine, the name that we had was Big Table Farm, and it was basically because we couldn't think up a different name, and we had a big table. And you didn't really like the name very much.
No, I still don't really
You
like.
still don't really like it? Well, you thought it was too pedestrian?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you say Big Table Farm in French?
I don't know.
Do you speak French? No? Okay.
I think we tried that and it didn't work.
It didn't fit us, because we don't need to speak French, but you have this French name if you don't need to speak French.
Anyway, it fits. It's an apt description.
It's a great name now. We've grown into it, and it's grown on us. But maybe not still. But anyway, Brian didn't then, and apparently doesn't even still now, like our winery's or farm's name. So he said, well, why don't you do a drawing for the front label, and then we'll put Big Table Farm on the back at first, and then we'll change it later. And having worked in marketing and design, I was like, no, like once you have a name, you have a name. So I like went along with it, but I knew we wouldn't change it. Sorry.
I know. Yeah.
You know I'm secretly a jerk.
No, never mind.
So this is that first drawing, and this was our 2006 Syrah. And then I had always wanted to do letterpress labels, so it was quite a process finding an artist to work with us. And in the beginning, this label we used wet glue, and it would take us about an hour a case. I timed it once to hand glue, because if you're working by yourself, to hand glue each label, put it in a sling to dry, and then wrap it in paper. But we only made 150 cases, so 150 hours.
It took us forever.
It did take us forever. So that was that first year, and we kept doing the hand glue labels all the way until
The wet glue until 2010.
Was it then? 11 was the first year that we had an
I think
adhesive.
so. Yeah.
But because we were hand printing them, we're like, well, we might as well do new drawings each year. So then the drawings started, and they were inspired by things on the farm. So that first year we just had the Syrah and the Rosé, and then we did Syrah, and then we started making Pinot Noir. So the first Pinot Noir labels, these are the 2008, and that the Resonance Vineyard we worked with, I did drawings of cows. So this is 8 and 9, and we still had the Willamette Valley Pinot, and so I always put the pigs on the Willamette Valley. So anyway, each wine had a theme, and there was a new drawing for each theme, and they're fun. They sort of tell our story year in and year out of what's happening, and an unintended consequence was I could tell which wine people had. They'd say, oh, I had your pig wine. I'd say, oh, did it have pig butts on it, or did it have one pig, you know? And so I can usually tell what vintage they have based on the drawing. And
I would say that the packaging, because of its uniqueness and the simplicity of the drawings and the paper, gained us a lot of traction and really helped with sales. I mean, people like wine that has labels that are attractive, and we definitely, that helped with the visibility of the brand, and you know, that you can look across a room and know that it's
they're quite iconic. Like, people recognize our brand at this point.
Yeah.
There isn't another one like it. In terms of just the austere, you know, the heavy paper, which no one else does.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
Well, not
anyway,
like this.
Yeah.
No one's crazy enough to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, but definitely, I call it advanced marketing. So now we spend about 3 or 4 weeks in the warehouse in January, February, labeling, and it means that we don't have to travel quite as much because, yeah. Anyway, there we go.
This book, actually the archive should probably have one of these, but this is our story of like why I do a drawing for each wine. So like this one, this is the Sunnyside Vineyard, this is the Syrah, and you know, and some of the stories are about like the Willamette Valley. I say the first year we moved to the farm in 2006, we got pigs. I remember bringing them home in the back of our Honda Civic as wieners in a dog crate. We've learned a lot since that first year. Now 11 years in, this is 3 years ago. After trying about 6 different heritage breeds, we settled on a small breed called the American Guinea Hogs. We've been raising this breed since 2013. They fit our farm and our lives very well. Our pigs live close to the house and therefore the kitchen, between the fruit trees that start giving around August and our very productive kitchen. We only have to buy a couple bags of feed each year. The nickname of this pig is the Homestead Hog because they are easy pasture keepers. They fatten beautifully from just what a homestead would produce. Anyway, I go on, I talk about, you know, anyway, that's more of a story about the pigs. Some of these stories have to do with the vineyards. Like I think I talk about the Cattrall Brothers vineyard in here. And that one's a neat one because they're also an old family.
Down in Amity.
They're down in Amity, yeah, and Julia makes wine, and that's the oldest certified organic vineyard. Sorry. It's like, here we go. The Cattrall Brothers are as charming and as sturdy as the old trucks and tractors they use for working their vineyard and hauling their fruit. And I always do drawings of their old trucks and tractors on their things, on their labels. I love drawing their old vintage trucks and tractors for these labels. Tom delivers grapes in his 1947 Ford flatbed all the way out to Big Table Farm each year. And those of you who come to visit us know that's no small feat. Cattrall is the oldest certified organic vineyard in Oregon. I think the old iconic vehicles fit both the wine and the vineyard in a rustic, down-to-earth way. So anyway, this whole book is, I wrote these stories all in one day, actually. It took me a couple months to edit them. But it was a day Brian was sampling. And on the first sampling day, he tries to visit all the sites, which this was a number of years ago, but I was riding around the car with you for like 12 hours. And I had my yellow pad. And when he'd walk out in the vineyard, I'd be like, okay, so I'm sitting in this vineyard. Let me write the story of this vineyard right now. And so I would just take notes or memories or things. And that was that day, and that writing was the start of this book. And I did this book. This is our 10-year anniversary book. We're now in year 13. So I did this a number of years ago. But I wanted to have the collection of the first 10 years of labels. So that's what this is. And I call it a book. It's a box set.
It's a folio. It's a folio. That's the fancy name.
A folio. I'm going to start saying that. This is a folio. He would know. You're an archivist.
And it's beautiful.
You know what folios are. Anyway, so that's the book of the collection of the drawings.
You mentioned earlier that when you struggled to sell wine early on and then you figured it out. So what did you figure out, and what is it about your marketing that works so well?
Telling the truth.
Yeah.
I know that sounds so simple, but you know, in the early days when I was doing graphic design for people and helping them design their wine labels, they would say, oh, I want to do a label that looks like this French producer and this other producer who's a friend of mine and this other thing I saw last week. And it's like, you know what? You're a dentist that likes bluebirds, so let's do a label about that, because that's the truth. Like, that's the thing that is a story you're going to be able to tell forever because it's authentic. And that's the thing that resonates more than anything with people, is authenticity. And that's always the highest compliment you can pay me, or people do pay me when they come out here and do tastings, usually with me, is that we are authentic. And I think that is your best tool, if you want to call it a tool, is that's all any of us want, is we want to be connected to each other. And that's what wine does. And if you're just extending that into the conversation around wine, when people are making a decision to take that home to their tables, they just want to have an experience that's authentic and then take that experience back home and share it with their friends. So.
And we were talking earlier about your use of social media and how you've integrated that into your marketing. So what is it that you try for in social media, in addition to authenticity, that makes yours so successful?
I guess that's the thing. I'm not actually trying for anything. I'm literally just having a good time. Like, I just love doing it. I love taking pictures of things. I just, when my husband's out in the garden in the evening, it's sweet. I think it's beautiful, and
And she's not a very good speller, so taking pictures is a pretty good thing.
Who uses it?
It's true.
It's true. I couldn't terrible speller. But yeah, I like to share, and I like taking pictures, and that works. Like, people want to see that. I mean, it's good that I have a farm and not, I'm trying to think of something that's not.
Well, but I think when you go back, if it's authentic, if it's, if you didn't have this, it would be something else. It would be whatever we made for dinner that night, and sometimes that's all it is if we make something, then that's what ends up. Yeah, if it's picture worthy.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that's important with social media is consistency. And if it's authentic, then it's easy to be consistent. Because you're not like, oh, I have to always use these 5 filters because it always has to look a certain way. If you're like, this is just who I am and this is my style and I'm just going to keep singing my song no matter what the circumstances, then you're going to have consistency. You also can't be lazy. You have to, you got to work at it. So.
Sure. So you mentioned that you're just now putting a vineyard in. So before this, you've been sourcing all your grapes.
He sat on Clementine. So you sat on her head.
You big oaf.
Sorry, Clementine. You big dork.
So I'm curious how you went about choosing what you wanted to make and then choosing where you wanted to make it from.
Some of it just fell into our lap, and that's okay. It's like, of course, it falls in your lap. You can say yes or no, and we said yes to a few different things, and it just happened slowly. We started with Syrah. They came from California, so that was kind of an oddball. It didn't make it any easier to sell since we were in Oregon. Yeah, from a business perspective, that wasn't really our best move. But we both enjoy Syrah, and it was, like I say, it made sense to say yes. And then as far as the Pinot Noir, we just sort of slowly added sites or vineyards as they became available. And
what were you looking for?
Initially, I was looking for older plantings. That's and still is something that's interesting to me. Maybe a little less important now as we've sort of moved forward. But yeah, initially that was something that was pretty important, and we still have some that are part of like the Cattrall Brothers
And
Sunnyside Vineyard would be the two that are in the older camp at this point.
How old is Palos Sandberg? When was it planted?
Oh, I don't know, early 2000s. So yeah, but even that, as time goes on, all these things that were planted, which seems like not that long ago, is
19 years.
yeah, a little while ago. So yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun, baby.
Yeah. I don't know. There was a whole lot of, other than that, in terms of, there wasn't a whole lot of, I would just take whatever was offered to me, and at some point. In the beginning, it's like, it was really difficult to find grapes. I wouldn't say there was a shortage, but we weren't as connected, and
Sure.
nobody knew who we were, and we didn't really know that many people. We didn't know that many people. So how do you go about finding fruit? And so we just kind of went slowly, and like I say, as we could afford it. I mean, even if we'd been offered a bunch of different things in the beginning, we couldn't afford to.
Because Matt helped us find the Riesling.
Yeah, so we made Riesling for a little while. And then we made a conscious decision to pivot to just Chardonnay, and that was a conscious decision to give up the other aromatic whites that we made and to just focus on that. And I think that was just based on what we enjoy drinking and what I enjoy making. I worked with Chardonnay in California pretty extensively, and that's what I enjoy drinking.
Sure.
Is Chardonnay versus the aromatic whites. That's just me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is this the world's longest interview?
It's going good. We haven't even switched batteries yet. We're doing great.
Oh, okay.
We are getting close to that. I won't keep you too much longer. So, what are you planting here?
Probably Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Yeah, I mean that's the what 90% of our production is at this point, and that just makes sense. I don't know what clones and rootstocks and whatever. There's some time to figure that out. I mean, I do need to sit down and figure out what we're going to do, but we wanted to prepare the ground, so to speak, and be able to get a better sense of what's there before really sort of trying to make those decisions. Because once you do it, you're done. It's you're not going to get a chance to do it again, at least not here.
Sure.
So we're not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry. So we'll take our time and do our best to match what our needs and desires are with what's appropriate for the ground that we're in the process of preparing.
Sure.
So yeah.
I think for the sake of history,
Uh-huh.
I think it's worth mentioning the people that helped us in the very beginning when we first got here, who were influential.
Absolutely.
I think Mike Etzel from day one was just so generous with just being just really encouraging. Like we spent some time with him socially, and he came over here for a few different dinners in the beginning, and I always just got the sense that he believed that we were going to make it, and that meant a lot. Kurt Johnson
Yeah, Kurt and Natalie.
and Natalie, both in the beginning when we were looking for the light switch in terms of sales. I remember going over to their house really late one night. Like, we called them at like 10 o'clock at night because we had some issue with somebody we were trying to sell wine to, and we were totally upset by it. And they're like, well, just come over right now. And we went over to their house at like 10:30 at night, had some wine, and they sat down with us for a while and talked to us. And that was when Natalie was like, well, do you have a credit card processing machine? We're like, no, do we need one of those? She's like, yeah, you do. And so those two were great. Tad,
Yeah, Tad Seedset.
from Ransom. Was really just, it was a little bit of a soft landing when we first moved here, and introduced us to a lot of people. And I mentioned Matt Burson.
Kevin Chambers.
Yeah, Matt came up and hand bottled with us a number of different times. He worked harvest. Well, he didn't work harvest, but he, I don't know, he was just
Around, yeah.
He was around, and he helped us with a lot of things and helped us source that first Riesling. And then Kevin Chambers was really important. He walked this property with us in the very beginning. Brian also worked for him. I worked for him.
And so did you, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of my first label clients. Mike Etzel was my first label client. I did graphic design for him, and that was important to keeping the lights on in those early days. Who am I forgetting?
Oh, I'm sure there's lots.
But those were some people who they had. They were already established here and had stature, and to have someone who has already found the light switches sort of help you was really huge, and I still feel a lot of gratitude for that, for people being kind. And it's important for us to remember that as we, are doing better, that, there's more people coming that we can in turn encourage. And I think that's an important thing to remember. But it's good to, record it, I guess, that those people helped us, and that's what creates history, is lineage of people, not just things or places.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you talked about your sort of slow, steady growth at this point. So as you have gotten to a point now where you feel like you're successful and you're starting to take a paycheck, as you say, what are you looking at in the future? What is on the horizon for the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. Well, we have this vineyard project that we're working on.
Sure.
As far as the winery goes, we're not expanding production. We're holding. The focus has always been on quality and not quantity, and we're at a point where I don't want to make any more wine, and I think that we're making wine that I really enjoy. I get to touch all of it, and I don't want that to change. I don't want to spend any more time in front of the computer than I already do. I'd rather be, making it and doing it than asking someone else to do it for me. So that will continue that way. I think Claire says that we're buffing and polishing. We're making things better in terms of just how things work. I think we're going to try to not work all the time. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work.
That's definitely a new goal.
Yeah.
We both kind of do the job of 3 people and have been for 13 years, and we are getting a little bit worn down. Mm-hmm. So we need to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
So that we just started taking 1 day a week off.
We've been doing that a while, but it's not quite enough.
We just started doing that 2 years ago. 1 day a week. So, yeah. A little more, I hate to use the term, but life-work balance would be nice. Mm-hmm. Those goats out there are screaming. That's because the Biochar guys took my ladder. And so I gave them hay instead of alfalfa, and they're pissed. Oh. They finally figured out that they don't have hay, and they want some alfalfa. Oh. Sorry.
That's awesome.
Tangent.
It's farm life.
Goats screaming.
What about the Oregon wine industry in general? I mean, you talk about kind of the welcome you got into it, and of course that's a pretty common story. People tend to be pretty welcomed in.
Yeah.
What do you see? What have you seen change since you've been here, and what do you see happening in the next, again, say 10, 15 years?
I've seen a lot of change. I've seen a lot of people, there's obviously been a huge influx of new projects and a lot more people who have experience in other regions, which I think is great for the quality of Oregon Pinot Noir. Because if you've worked harvest from a production standpoint, whether it's in Napa or South Australia or New Zealand or wherever, Washington, you're going to bring new sets of eyes and schooling and just all that experience to the Oregon projects. And you combine that with the Oregon collaboration and sharing that naturally exists here, or not naturally, but does exist here. I think, I've certainly heard people say, oh, so many people are coming, and maybe cast it potentially in a negative light, but I see it as a positive because the rising tide raises all ships, and when you have a higher concentration of intellectual property coming in from more places, I think that quality inevitably will go up. So I'm very positive about all the growth. Does it make it a little bit more competitive? Probably. Is that a bad thing? Not in my opinion. And do I see it changing more? Of course. Change is inevitable. It's the only thing you can count on. And we'd get bored. Everyone would if things didn't change. Because that's the only time you see growth is when you're challenged and things are changing. What do you think?
I don't know. I kind of hit a wall. Sorry.
It's time for a nap.
That's okay. I only got one question left, so hopefully you can muddle through the one we'll ask.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Here, I'll give you a tooth twister to wake you up.
No. You give me a drink of water, though. That'd be great.
Okay.
So my last question is:
Yes.
we know this is a
See what this book says?
a notoriously difficult industry on marriages, and so we like to ask the successful couples, what is the secret to making a marriage work in the wine industry, or in any small business?
I don't know. We like each other, and we spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
And we talk about everything, maybe too much, but we make all of our big decisions together. There are no secrets that I know of.
No. I have no energy to keep any secrets.
We definitely have our roles that have become more defined as we have moved forward. I think in the beginning we both did, there was overlap of different things. I mean,
Because we're both trying to figure it out. We didn't even know who was good at what yet, because we didn't even know what we were supposed to be doing.
yeah, that's true too. I definitely would make the wine, and Claire did label design, and then sales and marketing.
But you were involved in all that in the beginning.
Yeah, but that was sort of your, and still is your area of expertise. And of course I would consult with you about, making winemaking decisions and tasting, but that was my area. But then since we've grown, we have become more, I don't say independent in those areas, but maybe confident, and we don't need to check in quite as much. And then, we've hired people as we felt like we absolutely had to. We hired our first person to help with sales and marketing when we felt like we were unable to get back to people in a timely manner, and we knew that hiring someone,
Tiffany.
Tiffany, here's to Tiffany, yeah, would pay. She would pay for herself because we were already losing sales because we were unable to reach out to people appropriately, and so so that's how we've kind of approached the growth of our business.
He asked you a question about how we stay together as a couple.
But I'm just saying that we. But that was something that was part of running a successful business and still being married. Is that instead of making ourselves crazy trying to do it all, we've hired people to do certain things. I still only have 2 full-time and 1 part-time employee, so we're still small.
And maybe we do need to hire more people, and maybe that will make us able to take another day off a week.
Yeah, maybe. But through all of that, we continue to talk and communicate, and we don't have any kids, so.
That's why we're still married, because we don't have any kids.
Maybe, I don't know. So we don't have any kids, so instead of talking about kids, we talk about our business and all the things that we would like to do, would love to see. That's where we put all of our time and energy, and we've done it all together. Yeah, it hasn't been, and there's enough diversity that it isn't all Brian and making wine. There's the animals and the art, and so it's not like you're following me or I'm following you. We're moving down the road together, right?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent answer. Don't let her tell you any otherwise.
I know that there's something that's about to
you bite you in the ass. No.
smack you in the head.
No, I'm not talking about that topic. I'm talking.
You definitely haven't painted as much as you'd like.
Yeah, but that's fine. That is changing.
Yes.
You're witnessing just an internal thing. So Brian makes the wine, and we've built a business around that, but I am a fine artist. Mm-hmm. And so we haven't spent as much time building a business out of that. Mm-hmm. Now, could you build the same business and size around my art career as we have around him making wine? Probably not. So I think we've probably made the right choice. But now that we've built that's what that's what this is. And, hopefully I'll be able to spend a little more time on that, because that is my life's work. Mm-hmm. But back to, I think what helps us as a couple, what I would say is mutual respect. We have the same core values, and our morning walk.
Yeah, I was going to get there too, but you kept interrupting me.
I was being super quiet. I was sitting here in rapt attention.
Yeah, whatever.
We exercise together every morning. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we jog, sometimes we walk. It's usually a combination therein, but it's about 40 minutes every morning up to the top of the canyon and back. And we always walk back down. Sometimes we're usually quiet going up because we're
trying to run
unsuccessfully in my case. But we walk back and we talk every morning.
Mm-hmm. And not always about work, but a lot of times.
Usually about work. But it doesn't matter. It's still uninterrupted time with just the two of us and no one interrupting. And I think that's really good.
Mm-hmm. And I think we make all of our decisions together, even if they're unrelated. Like if I need something for the winery, I'll just check in and say, hey, I'm going to do this. And Claire will say, okay, or not. Usually you say okay.
Do I ever say it's not okay?
I don't know. Can't think of it. But I tell you what I'm going to do.
If it's like a big purchase or something.
Right. Yeah.
You don't tell me you're buying like a hose clamp or
something. No, of course not.
Honey.
Well, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much. We do really appreciate your time and your energy here. This is the end of it. If there's anything I should have asked that I didn't, or anything else you'd like to say here, this is your chance to have an open mic. I know we've kept you plenty long, so.
Not that I could think of.
Not off the top of my head.
All right.
No.
Well, thank you. We really do appreciate this.
Thank you guys,
and go ahead and watch you off the hook now.